everyone to the MMA Vivisection with me, Zane Simon, and my co-host, Connor Rebish. It was Cincinnati Denny's that we found him in today. I'd been paging through all the phone book, just calling down the list, and sooner or later, they got him.
No, haven't you heard they've actually taken a cue from IHOB? They've rebranded as Debbie's.
Oh, Debbie's, yeah.
So it was the local Cincinnati's Debbie's.
Debbie.
Where, you know, one too many slices of pecan pie.
Yeah,
what can I say?
If things happen. Anyway, we're here to talk about this UFC on Fox 30 card, a very good card. And
let's evaluate it, Zane. How do you feel about this whole card?
Okay, the whole card kind of sucks as like a top to bottom product.
I mean, however, this is one of those cards that doesn't need an incredible undercard because the top three fights are sensationally good.
Yeah, if you know, it's one of those things where it's just like the thing with the bottom of the card is that it looks like every other card, so I can't then you know, I can't be like, well, the card sucks because these bottom fight sucks, and then go over and look at the Shogun Smith card or the Santos Ivanov card, which we even like that card, but even then, like, you know, I can't be like, oh, you know, I'm getting Dustin Ortiz versus Matheus Nicolau and not Said Nurmagomedov versus Justin Scoggins, you know.
Yeah, let's never speak of UFC Hamburg again. And it's not dog shit, to be clear. Like Ronda Marcos versus Nina Ansarov is like a contenders fight. Matheus Nicolau and Dustin Ortiz are both fringe contenders.
So is Katlyn Chookagian Davis is the number one in this fight.
And that one cheating a bit because there is like literally no one at women's flyweight. But it's okay. And then, like I said, the top three are excellent fights. So. Yeah.
No, I mean, like the bottom of this card is as interesting as the bottom of UFC cards are anymore, and the top is what matters because I'm willing to sit through fine fights that are fine if the payoff at the end is a bunch of really good stuff.
That's the truth. It's a lot. Your brain is always a lot more like prepared to have one of those. Boy, this card's way better than it seemed like it was going to be. Experiences. If you know that you're not wasting your time.
Yeah.
So if you know you have something really cool to look forward to, then like you're in a good place to be pleasantly surprised by a surprisingly good card.
There were a lot of cards on that Hamburg card, or a lot of fights on that Hamburg card that were fine. That were, if this was the only fight like that on a card, it was fine and you would never think twice about it. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with like, you know, Nasrat Haqparast versus Mark Diakese, or
I liked that fight.
Damir Hadzovic versus Nick Hein. Like these fights they're fine, but you have a whole card full of fine, and then
it ends in Shogun being assassinated in a minute, and it's the most depressing thing you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't, you know. Nobody wants that kind of card, so you got to have these fights at the top where you're like, I know if nothing else, I'm going to see skill at the highest level of the sport being played out, and Alvarez versus Poirier can't be anything other than violence. So,
nope. I mean, it could be another no contest. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump right into the bottom of this then, and lightweight bout: Devin Powell versus Alvaro Herrera. And Connor, take it away.
This one's clearly the best fight on the card. I mean,
I've been thinking about it for months.
Both of these guys are really bringing the fans out. I mean, I'm gonna have to go with Devin Powell here. I think again, this is not one of those fights where either guy inspires a ton of confidence. Devin Powell has, I think I've name checked him a few times. Like he's so unremarkable that he has actually stuck in my head.
Yeah.
But he's not unremarkable. He's just like profoundly a mediocre kind of fighter. I'm really trying not to be cruel to the man here. Like he's not an elite athlete.
He's a poor athlete with no structure to his game.
Yeah.
Like, what if you took the most stripped out, broken down version of Carlos Condit possible And then you were just like, instead of a flow chart, you just had like you had the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like conspiracy room. You know?
Yeah. No, that is a very good comparison. And I remember we made the Carlos Condit comparison before too. It's like a bad Carlos Condit. But there's some good in there too. Like he is a maniac. He
throws constantly. He mixes up his strikes all the time.
He has no idea that his striking is as bad as it is. He's extremely tough. You know, like he has taken a lot of shots in some fights, and it hasn't even. Not only has it not really hurt him that easily, it has rarely changed the way that he fights.
No, in fact, that's been the most remarkable and winning thing about him regionally is that guys will be like killing him, and they're like, oh, if I keep coming after him, and he just like starts swinging back, and like you just like, holy shit, what does it take to put this guy down? So.
Yeah, and Alvaro Herrera is similarly unimpressive athletically and tends to get finished. And Powell is a submission artist with a few finishes to his name. So I'm going to go with Powell.
Yeah, I looked at this fight on paper and I was like, oh, Herrera's going to fucking kill this dude. And then I actually like watched a little tape. I was like, oh, Herrera's going to get subbed.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Just because I mean, he's a banger. He's a dude who wants to get knockouts and doesn't have any game outside of that. And Powell's a guy who never gets knocked out. He's never been knocked out. He'll get clipped up. You can beat him if you can just stand in front of him and swing away and be consistent. But I don't trust Herrera to do that. Herrera got subbed by Jordan Rinaldi after almost knocking him out, and Rinaldi fell on him. And Herrera was like, oh, I guess I'll fall over too. Done.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shame in being submitted by Vicente Luque. And, like, Rinaldi is not a bad fighter overall. Like, he has some...
the dude. A lightweight Von Flue choke.
Yeah. It's more like just how he looks up to that point, how he responds to the submission. Just feels like a tough guy who's going to be there for 15 minutes trying.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's going to be tough for him.
Yeah, that was my thought too. Herrera could melt him, could happen, could be the first knockout loss of Powell's career, but it's pretty much Herrera has to get a knockout or he's probably going to do something stupid and get subbed or outworked or tired or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed.
Powell is the favorite, opened at -170, my God, and adjusted up to -126 and is currently stayed there at -127. His odds don't look like they've been open very long.
Honestly, I think you could say this is them being nice to Devin Powell a little bit, because the last two guys he's fought were Drakkar Klose and Daryl Horcher, which is not like an easy first two UFC fights.
No. So, especially Drakkar Klose. That's just a nightmare for Powell. Because Klose is nothing but pressure and composure. Like, oh, I'll just stand in front of you and throw the same couple of strikes over and over again.
Yep.
And that will absolutely beat you. Herrera opened at +130, adjusted down to -102, and is currently at +102. This should be close to even.
Yeah, absolutely.
Herrera has the power, and Powell has no structure, but Powell's the pick to make if you have to.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to pick it.
You don't have to.
We do. Next up, women's strawweight bout, Randa Markos versus Nina Ansaroff. And similarly, this is kind of this is a fight all about composure to me, and whether or not Ansaroff has enough of it yet.
Mm-hmm. She's clearly developing it.
She's clearly worked on it. She used to be the fighter that every time you backed her up, she'd just default to a bad spinning strike that would get her pushed against the cage and taken down and fighting off her back. And then the fact that she's a reasonably technical power striker would mean nothing.
Yeah.
And she's worked on that. She does not get backed up and pressured nearly as easily. For Markos, it's kind of a question of what kind of Randa Markos is going to come out. Is it going to be the woman who just went out and pressed Juliana Lima against the cage and kind of ground on her and swept her on the ground and just outworked her in the clinch in a boring fight? Because that could beat Nina Ansaroff.
Mm-hmm.
But Marcos is rarely the same fighter, fight to fight. Like, she has this busy boxing style that she can make work for her, but it's often, I don't know, it just kind of comes and goes. She'll like jump into the pocket with combos and jump out. And then you see a fight like that Lima fight where it just looks like she doesn't want to strike at all. And she's also very willing to just kind of, like, she seems also in the same way, like her wrestling kind of comes and goes too. Sometimes Marcos is a great wrestler. Sometimes it looks like she just clings to a body lock and doesn't know how to get the fight to go anywhere from there. I'm going to bet slightly on Ansaroff's increased composure. I think that she knows exactly what fight she wants to have. And she's coming out looking for that fight now. And she knows, like, okay, I can't get backed up. I can't make mistakes when I back up. I can just stay composed, throw my power shots, don't overextend anything, just fight my fight. And that can be enough to beat Marcos if Marcos isn't just pushing constantly to get this fight into the clinch or on the ground. And I don't necessarily trust that she will. So I'm going to take Ansaroff, but I think it's a lot dependent on what kind of fight Marcos comes out looking for.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you all the way. Firstly, of course, you did miss the most obvious piece of analysis here, which is that Ronda Marcos has traded wins and losses since 2014.
It's true. Yeah.
She's gone win, loss. So obviously she's due for a loss here. She has to lose to Nina Ansaroff, which is enough for me to agree with your pick. But also, I want to say, like, yeah, Marcos is definitely she's definitely the picture of a well-rounded, all-rounder kind of fighter, and I think that is her problem. Like, she has adapted a game plan to many different opponents, but it's a very yesterday's MMA understanding of what well-roundedness is, where it's like, this fight she's wrestling, this fight she's counter-punching, and it's like, what's the connection between these two? What makes you think that one person should be good at both of these two things equally? Now, they may not be the right decision for the opponent, but Marcos has never at any point seemed to really settle into like a specialty, like a thing that she's really good at. This is what she likes doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, this is what, if given the chance, she will destroy you doing, because she's just like, well, whatever I have to do for the fight in front of me. And so there's always just little decision-making moments that go wrong, little moments of hesitation, or a blind spot or two, technically, where she doesn't know how to respond to a specific situation. She has skills everywhere. But like, mentally, the ability to focus in on one way she's supposed to be fighting seems to be trouble. And Nina Ansaroff does not have that problem. She has been a striking specialist since her MMA career started and continues to be. And I think her striking has gotten a little better. I think it's gotten more composed. And her combinations are looking really nice and slick these days. The Angela Hill fight was really impressive to me. But also the mentality on her end, as you pointed out, is huge. I think, I don't know, like, just literally living in a house with championship mentality may have made a difference. But Nina is a different fighter than she was a few years ago. And it's kind of like she's the foil to Ronda Marcos, that this laser-guided focus that she is developing, at the very least, is precisely the thing that always seems to have been missing from Marcos' game. So I have to go with Ansaroff as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I really do think that if Marcos can just come out and press for the clinch and just bully, look for takedowns, and stay on Ansaroff with a physical game, that way she can absolutely win this.
True.
I think she could probably force the bad defensive decision-making that Ansaroff used to have, that probably hasn't gone totally out of her game.
And you know, the trouble with being a specialist, like, Ansaroff is more technically limited to the things she does well. And it does require a pretty intense kind of like focus to get back to the positions that favor you over and over. And Marcos has shown good game planning. I will say, like, I think she's at a Michigan top team still.
Yep.
Darren Cruikshank's team. And for all the issues you could perhaps say about, like, an older way of thinking about MMA or whatever, it does seem like they game plan pretty well. I've seen quite a few of their fighters approach their opponents very intelligently. So
Yep. So there are opportunities. I'm not just like, I don't think Ansaroff deserves to be a big favorite, basically.
I'd like to see almost even odds here, to be honest.
Ansaroff opened at -105, adjusted up and down to -134, and has fallen down to -147, which is where she's currently at. Marcos opened at -135, has climbed to +124, which is where she's currently at +121. So
Marcos has beaten Carla Esparza and Juliana Lima and like competed really tightly, with other top fighters. So like, I don't overlook Ronda Marcos ever. She doesn't always blow you away, but she is good.
Yeah, it's always like her ability to mix in and like have a good fight with anybody. It's always there. It's just, she also has losses to Courtney Casey and, Alexa Grasso.
It's weird this division doesn't get the same the same treatment as men's flyweight, right? Because it has the same problem. Everyone here is really solid, but they all have to lose to each other because there's not enough of them.
Yeah, I think. I mean, for one thing, it's already bigger than men's flyweight.
That's true.
There's just a higher concentration of talent already flowing in.
Because the UFC clearly hasn't really been trying when it comes to flyweight for like the last 3 years. Yeah, fair enough.
All right. That brings us to a flyweight bout. Dustin Ortiz, Matheus Nicolau.
Oh, all right. This is a tough matchup. I think Dustin Ortiz is like your perennial tough out in the flyweight division. He's reliable. He has been adding little wrinkles to his game over time, but really it's like, you're going to get pace. You're going to get lots of wrestling and scrambling. You know that you're going to have to fight the full 15 minutes hard. And that is the part that I think should most concern Matheus Nicolau.
Yeah.
Nicolau is a very good, very promising young fighter. He's still only, 23?
Yep.
25, a little older, but he's young. He's 25 still. He is just now coming off of like his two biggest wins, a sort of undecisive one over John Moraga and a really dominant striking victory over Louis Smolka. And what really strikes you about him is that for being such a young and inexperienced fighter, his poise, his decision making, he looks like a much more experienced fighter than he is.
Well, he's also been like a lot of Brazilians, even young ones. He's been fighting for quite a while now. Like,
sure,
he started back in 2010. So
sure, okay, so yeah, he's got the kind of decision making you would see out of like a very promising young boxer, where you're like, okay, boxers in the U.S. start when they're 10.
Yeah, he's
or
a
younger.
Young veteran, very much.
Yes. And that goes right down to like the willingness to wait. That is the thing that can be an issue because he is a counterpuncher. That's what he's most comfortable doing, and he will wait and wait to make his opponent make the first mistake. That's what happened in the John Moraga fight.
Yep.
And rewatching it, like I came away from rewatching it feeling a little better about both guys' performances. It was just a rough style matchup, I think, where neither guy was all that comfortable leading against such an obviously risky counterpuncher. But basically, Nicolau has a style that allows someone like Ortiz to dictate the pace of the fight. Ortiz basically gets to decide at will how fast or how slow do I want to fight. And the question there is like, how carefully can someone like Dustin Ortiz make those decisions? How well can Dustin Ortiz be like, okay, maybe dial it back? Like, that's the thing I'm really worried about with Ortiz is I think he can probably ride the line until the point that something happens and he falls over. Like he lands one really good shot or gets hit really hard or they exchange 4 shots in a row and everyone barely misses, something that excites him or makes him anxious. And then suddenly we're looking at a different Dustin Ortiz. And that's the problem. But I'm still tempted to pick Dustin Ortiz here. And I think it's because I have seen Matheus Nicolau really feel the effects of pace in previous fights. It has had an effect on him because he does allow the opponent to decide how often he throws, and he tends to throw all of his counters hard, lots of power. And the thing is like a lot of MMA fighters, his instincts when he gets tired are to wrestle. And I think if he becomes more willing to stay grappling and wrestling with Ortiz as this fight goes on, that looks like a fight where Ortiz kind of gets more and more into it as the fight goes on. So as long as Ortiz can keep a methodical but relentless pace on Nicolau, I think he will weather an early storm and get Nicolau to start tying up with him. So I'm going to go with Dustin Ortiz.
Yeah, I mean, I'm tempted. I mean, my pick is basically Nicolau by a split decision, where I'm pretty sure he's going to win the first round and a half, and then it's just a question of how much of round two does he actually win. And if it's not enough, he'll lose, and if it is enough, then Ortiz will lose. I think it's I think the composure he has on his feet. Part of it is that I liked how much more he led against Louis Smolka in that fight. He spent a lot less time counterpunching and looked a lot less passive early. It's like, oh well, nothing's happening in this moment. I'll throw a big heavy combination and hurt this guy a little bit. Wasn't just pure counterfighting like he did against Moraga.
I think a lot of it had to do Moraga didn't want to lead. No. Smolka didn't realize he was stepping into range. You know what I mean? Like Moraga was very pointedly not entering range. Smolka kept walking in where it was like, well, I have to hit him.
Well, I kind of think Ortiz is going to do that same thing. Ortiz has a very noted habit of liking to just march in on people and try to get his hands going. And, it's like, oh, yeah, you've got a couple slick combinations in there, but you kind of go to the same couple of them over and over again. Your head's always online. And that all means to me that, like, Ortiz is probably going to get hit pretty hard in the first round. And in the second round before he, and if he doesn't get knocked out, I trust it that he'll be able to force the pace out of Nicolau that'll eventually wear Nicolau down. But until it does, I'm going to pick Nicolau to win the early half of the fight. And
there may not be enough time. And Nicolau is, like, I want to say this, he's very good. Like, he's a future contender, I think, just looking at his skill set, how it works together, how well he understands what his game is designed to do. And especially because, like, if you watch his footage, you can see him fighting in other styles. He has hit upon this as his favorite way of fighting. He used to be a Novo União guy and used to fight like Renan Barão. Like, he used to pressure more, throw a lot of kicks. He was a very different fighter, and now it's like he's realized this is what I'm good at, and I think it's pretty clear he is. It's a style with limitations, but he has timing and power and everything you need to be a great counterpuncher. Patience, of course.
So I'm taking him here, but I think it'll be a nip-tuck thing. Pretty much like every Dustin Ortiz fight that he doesn't get finished in. And even the ones he does, it's usually like a really close fight up until he's getting finished. So
Ortiz is the
finished the once, actually, now that I look at it. So
he's except for the finishes, he's almost this division's like Dennis Bermudez. Just doesn't get the respect for being so tough for everyone who fights him.
That's a very similar comparison between Dennis Bermudez, where it's just like, if you weren't so quite, like, you don't look stiff, but you're so predictable with how you come into range and enter the pocket and your approach that everybody kind of knows what a Dustin Ortiz fight looks like now.
But there's always still a big question. Can you stop him from doing it? He's still a challenge.
Dustin Ortiz is the underdog, opened at plus 145 and adjusted up to plus 190, got up as high as plus 203 before dropping down to plus 155 and currently at plus 161. Nicolau opened at minus 185, adjusted down to minus 239 and was running right around there until he jumped up just recently to minus 188, currently out at minus 197, starting to fall again.
I see no reason for one of these guys to be in the 200 range. I mean, Nicolau is very good, but like his style has really built-in limitations.
I mean, he beat a much lesser athlete in Louis Smolka last time, who even then came back and had a strong third round against him as Nicolau got tired. And that Moraga fight was...
Neither guy looked good.
His sort of crisis of not really figuring out, like, not knowing how to be dangerous and functional after that Benavidez loss. And he was just kind of super gun shy on the back foot, not wanting to enter range, not wanting to get caught out. And it wasn't much of a fight at all.
He still almost won a decision. So.
Yeah. So, other than that, you got Bruno Mesquita submission on there.
I don't have minus 230 favorite kind of faith in Nicolau just yet, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I like him. I like his game. I like his composure. But it's a very, like, Brad Tavares kind of, Alejandro Perez kind of, like you're going to be walking an incredibly fine line until you really get this perfected style.
Yeah. And even if you perfect it, I mean, what's a fighter like Matheus Nicolau? What's his like dream goal? Is like Rafael Assunção.
Yeah,
is like being a fighter who wins a lot of split decisions by just being better than everyone.
Yep. Versus to a women's flyweight bout, Alexis Davis, Katlyn Chookagian, and Davis is probably going to win. Just in the way that Davis has always won fights, where you watch, she's like the far opposite end of the whatever spectrum that Jessica I is on. Where you like watch a minute of any or 30 seconds of any Jessica I fight, and you're like, this looks technically pretty good. I totally see what she's doing. And then you watch a full round, and you're like, what the hell is this? And Alexis Davis, you watch like 30 seconds of anyone in her fights, you're like, really? And then you watch a whole round, and it's like, oh, okay, I see. You're
all right.
You have a lot of, she's always had a lot of confidence in her ability to just go after people, keep pressure on, keep a high output of strikes on people, get into the body lock, and find a way to hit the mat, whether she's on top or whether she's on the bottom and can go for subs and hit sweeps. She's just stayed after people and stayed busy, and it's gotten her a lot of wins. Better athletes beat her, especially stronger athletes.
Mm-hmm.
But, she still got a split decision win over Liz Carmouche, and she got that win over Sarah Kaufman not long ago. She beat Jessica I. So, it's very much, she's just got a consistency to her that wins a lot of fights.
Mm-hmm.
And Chookagian has a consistency to her that wins a lot of fights kind of just as a testament to other fighters not having.
Chookagian is, how I always used to say that, what's the Canadian striker? I always say he's Firas Zahabi's like ideal fighter.
Oh God.
You know what I'm talking about? He's bald. He's got a shaved head. He's a younger guy, kind of.
No. You've now mystified me. Who's he fought?
Damn it. He lost to Trinaldo. He got knocked out in the first round.
Oh yeah.
Tried to play guard against him. Sorry, I've really thrown the show off the rails now.
I know exactly who you mean now. And yes, he's
Jesus, just for the compare, I'm becoming my mother. His
Chad
name
Chad Laprise.
Chad Laprise. Yeah, irrelevant. Like Chad Laprise is Firas Zahabi's perfect fighter, I think that Katlyn Chookagian is, in a weird way, Mark Henry's ideal fighter. Because her style is all about the process that he tries to instill in all of his fighters. Like the things Mark Henry really prefers are like rote combinations, high work rate, lots of movement. It's like Chookagian has a style that you make her even less effective than she is, make her less accurate, less powerful, blah, blah, blah. She's still going to win a lot of fights.
Yeah.
Mark Henry teaches a very winning style where it's like, just by virtue of how you've trained yourself to fight, you are going to be scoring points. You're always looking to score more than your opponent, be busier than them.
Chookagian, I mean, otherwise, she's kind of Holly Holm without the chance of accidentally falling onto a power punch every now and then.
She is Holly Holm to a T, slightly better at coming forward and landing power, especially as the fight goes on, notably worse as a counterpuncher.
And notably worse as an athlete too. Like just not. I mean, Holly Holm is big and strong and tough, and like big and strong in a way that is shocking for a lot of people in her division.
She's definitely got Holly's stamina. Like Chookagian can go forever, but
no, she's fast. She's a good she's fast and she's a good athlete in that way. But Holly is kind of like a weirdly a brick house for somebody who rarely hits with power. And Chookagian is just kind of willowy, you know, and
she seems to have the physicality you would expect out of a fighter with this style, to be fair.
Yeah. So for Davis, I mean, the big question is, can Davis actually track her down standing up? Can she rush her and get close to her and take her down, or just, you know, put hands on her? If she can't, she'll lose. But I don't think that Chookagian is so defensively proficient to prevent that, frankly. And otherwise, Davis just has a style it's much less technically pretty standing up, but it's much more built around being functional. Chookagian, it's that Holly Holm like complete lack of range thing where it's just, you know, she's gonna have a hyper competitive fight with Betchkohea for a couple of rounds, and you know, like that's the Chookagian thing. So as long as Davis mixes things up, as long as she tries to do more than just have a range kickboxing battle, I trust her to win this fight.
Yeah. Chookagian is she's one of those fighters. She's not, I would describe her as not particularly effective on her own, but very difficult to look good against.
Yeah.
Again, because of just what's built into her style. It's lots of volume, lots of movement. She is just always scoring or doing things
looking like she might be scoring.
Exactly. Yeah. She's always doing things that give her a chance of scoring. So at every second of the bout, she might be scoring. And I think with the key eyes and with the volume, it does tend to make judges does give them a slightly harder time of determining who is really scoring.
Yep.
Because Chookagian just she looks like she's doing a lot. And that's tough on her opponents and the judges.
Yep.
And that's a little difficult at this point. Like Alexis is 33. She's had some performances lately where there has been granted against the likes of like Sarah McMahon, where like athleticism has been such a difference that it has really come through. And that doesn't seem to be like that'll be quite an issue here. And I really did like the way that Alexis fought Liz Carmouche. I think like a lot of the ways that you can match up favorably with Liz Carmouche also match you up favorably with Chookagian.
Yeah.
As long as you can see past all the bullshit. Because Chookagian does about as much effective striking as Carmouche.
Yeah.
But she works a lot more. So you have to be able to see through the bullshit and just maintain what you're doing. I think at this point, Davis is probably an experienced enough fighter to pull that off. To just stick to what she's doing, keep coming forward behind a jab, keep kicking the legs, keep tying her up in the clinch. Chookagian, I mean, I think like at some point she might be around for a little while as a fighter and continue
as long
to
as
develop.
she wants to do this, like flyweight, I don't think that strawweight. I don't think flyweight's going to be blessed with a lot of power punching knockout artists.
Right.
So without that, being busy is going to keep you around forever.
Yeah, and she's got a style to build on. Like she's busy with a lot of pretty good looking boxing technique. There are a lot of glimmers of good stuff. It's just she needs to learn over time to kind of settle down, like when to sit down, when to
land a jab. Landing a jab would be really nice.
Yeah, because at the moment she will land a shitload of jabs against the likes of Irene Aldana, a fighter who just like loads up on power shots and walks in over and over and over. But a fighter like Alexis Davis, who comes in behind her own jab and throws, like slow but technically fairly okay combinations. Chookagian tends to pull her punches a lot, and so she's got potential. And like I'm waiting for a kind of corner turning performance from her.
Yeah,
and Davis is certainly at the stage in her career where she could be that performance.
Yeah, I mean, because Chookagian, she's only been doing this since 2014, so there's still definitely like in the next couple of years you expect to see her hit that point where suddenly it's like, okay, now you're an elite competitor. It's just,
yeah.
I don't know whether hopefully that happens and it's not just tracked into the Holly Holm style forever, where you just constantly like.
I mean, already I think you could say like Chookagian looks like Holly Holm if she was trained by someone who knows how to teach boxing. Because like, I mean, you know, like mechanically,
yeah,
she's already a significantly better puncher than Holm, and you can see it. Like there are, like I said, look at Chookagian in the third round of her fights, even the ones you remember being very boring. She develops her sense for the range and the timing as the fight goes on. She can sit down on her shots.
Yeah,
I've seen her rip some really nasty body shots and land some good counter right hands and things like that. She just needs to settle down.
Yep.
Before she can do it. That's the real issue with her. I think she'll stop being quite so Holly Holm in time.
Yeah. Odds on that. You're picking Davis, right?
I'm picking Davis too. I'm really not happy about it though.
I know. Odds on it. Davis started out at plus 115, adjusted up and down to plus 120 or so, and then has risen slowly up, got up as high as plus 133 and is down back to plus 129. Chookagian opened up at minus 155, adjusted up and down to minus 149 or so, dropped to minus 157 and is plateaued out there at minus 156. I get that Chookagian has some reasons to be a favorite. She's throws a lot of volume, and honestly, neither woman's gonna knock each other out, so it's not hard to see why she might win. I think if Davis pushes the clinch as much as she's want to, I think she's got a serious chance to derail.
Also, Davis, I'm really hoping that Davis, like, you can kick the shit out of a fighter like Chookagian, and no one ever seems to realize that. Liz Carmouche did. Liz Carmouche wrestled and kicked. She did no boxing with her, and Davis can make that work, like having very slow, inaccurate hands, but the ability to throw a low kick after every punch combination could be. Doesn't sound like a fun fight as I describe it, but it could be the key to winning the boring fight.
All right, that brings us to a lightweight bout: John Makdessi versus Ross Pearson, and go after it.
I'm hyped for this one.
Oh,
we
God,
get the two veteran kings of the two early paragons of MMA striking in the lightweight division.
Two guys who've been talking about retirement for 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah, but this is, like old guys should fight each other at a certain point.
No, I'm actually totally
cool with this. Both these guys clearly still want to be fighting, and I very fond, like I have nostalgia for these guys. I have fond memories around the time when I first started getting into MMA of seeing both John Makdessi and Ross Pearson and being blown away by both. I remember Ross Pearson's fight with Edson Barboza, super competitive, split decision, that one. And I remember John Makdessi's fight with, let's see. I remember John Makdessi's fight with Sam Stout.
Yeah.
And I remember his fight with Darren Cruikshank too. So I love both these guys. I have for a long time. I think it's been a little harder to look at Ross Pearson and see the ways in which he's slipping. Even though he clearly still has been slipping, he has looked, I think, more consistently like himself in a lot of his recent bouts. Although, in fairness, that probably has to do with the fact that like Makdessi's gotten finished quickly and suddenly in more of his recent fights, like the Cerrone.
Makdessi has fought a couple of dangerous, very dangerous fighters. Well, and Pearson has too. And when both guys, when they've fought guys who are really dangerous, have gotten knocked out.
Yeah. So I'm not going to say I think one of these guys is really more washed than the other, even though Pearson just had a 4-fight losing streak. I think they're probably still at similar levels athletically. So I think we're looking at a competitive matchup, a very competitive matchup here. I'll say that stylistically, I tend to favor Makdessi, and it's mostly because it's very difficult to shake John Makdessi out of doing what he wants to do.
Yeah.
He is not at all. He's pretty dauntless. He doesn't get frustrated with a slow fight or with getting tagged. Like, he stays very calm. He adjusts very technically, and always does what he wants to do. And we have said it again and again. One of the key issues with Ross Pearson's game is that he doesn't seem to know what kind of fighter he is. He's got all these obvious tactics, but he doesn't seem to understand what style works best for him. And I think we both agree that all of his best performances have come when he is counterpunching or pot shotting off the back foot.
Yep.
He moves very well. He's got a great sense of timing and range and a ton of experience. And he looks like it. When he made Paul Felder chase him around, to me, that was like the last brilliant Ross Pearson performance.
Yep.
And most of his fights, he chases people. And I think John Makdessi is exactly the type of fighter to get Ross Pearson to chase him. Now, Pearson's still like a bigger and more, I think, a little more powerful, and will throw his combinations. And Makdessi's slowing down and getting a little less good defensively. He used to be one of the very best defensive fighters in this division. So I really can't see Pearson cracking him with a hook, chasing him down. Makdessi being too comfortable playing off the back foot, but he's also just a super disciplined, super technical kickboxer, and always has been. So as long as Makdessi hasn't stopped minding his P's and Q's, I think he will win a decision over Ross Pearson.
Yeah, I mean, that all is pretty much my read on it. The big thing, like, too, with Pearson in that Hirota style where, you know, he had a fighter in Mizuto Hirota who will continually lead the dance and doesn't have power to finish anyone. It was kind of a perfect opportunity for Ross Pearson to suddenly look rejuvenated and look like Ross Pearson of old.
Really, like, he looks the same as he does in all of his recent fights. Like, he hasn't fallen off a cliff. He's still good. No. He's just that one half step behind being a top fighter now.
But he also did almost get, like, knocked out by Mizuto Hirota at one point in that fight.
True. But Mizuto Hirota is a future champion, so.
So, like, even in a fight that really favors him lately, it's still been
right.
Like, there have been those moments where you're like, ooh, you know? And for Makdessi, I don't think that that's really the same truth. Like, Makdessi, even in fights that favor him, he'll still make them really ugly and close, because even in fights that favor him, he just does not fight that much.
Yeah.
But he handled Abel Trujillo pretty easily.
Well, and like Matheus Nicolau, like, the more you give Makdessi, the more he will work. His game responds sort of thoughtlessly. It's just mechanically efficient.
Yeah.
So you can just set the triggers off more if you come forward more. So it's really like, is Pearson the kind of fighter who can be baited into coming forward more and more as the fight goes on?
Yeah, pretty.
Kind of seems like it. So,
the only thing is that, you know, Makdessi's also, like, with a step lost, he's not necessarily the same dangerous, like, funky potential knockout threat. And so if this is a decision, does Makdessi work hard enough to beat Ross Pearson?
Yeah.
And that's a worthwhile question, because he may just not. Like, there's a reason he went to a split decision with Mehdi Baghdad, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And lost a split to Yancy Medeiros and Alan Patrick. Both fights, you could argue, he won.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just because he doesn't throw that much. So Pearson probably doesn't have the range to really trouble Makdessi in the ways that Baghdad and Patrick did and make that fight awkward for him. They're both 5'8". Mm-hmm. They're both, you know, I know Makdessi's all head, but still, like, Pearson's nobody's idea of an incredible range striker. So I'm still trusting Makdessi as well. But if this is just a points battle, it could be a close one.
Boy, it's only been a few years since Ross Pearson versus Edson Barboza, and I feel like you're looking at a much lower athletic version of that matchup in this fight. It's going to be a stark contrast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm still into it.
Makdessi is opened up at -210, and got all the way up as high as minus 161 before drifting slowly back down to minus 173. Pearson opened at plus 160, plummeted all the way down to plus 139, and then has risen slowly up to plus 144. I think this should be closer and closer to even. Like, there's a better chance that Makdessi gets a knockout than Ross Pearson does, but there's a very good chance that nobody gets a knockout, and this is just a razor-thin fight fought on the margins of, well, I feel like Makdessi landed the better shots, but Pearson was throwing more and maybe hit him a few more times. And
yeah, I mean, it feels fair because Pearson has lost 4 in a row very recently.
Yeah,
but also like both of these guys have styles that put them into split decision kind of fights.
Yeah,
so it should be expected to be close.
Yep. That brings us to a light heavyweight bout: Gadzhimurad Antigulov versus Ion Cutelaba. And I'm interested in this. This feels like a very easy 2-outcome fight for me, which is basically Antigulov gets a submission within 5 minutes, or Cutelaba wins one way or another, potentially by knockout. I'm gonna pick Antigulov because Cutelaba is really pretty good and solid at defending upper body takedowns. But the one point that Misha Serkinov really got in and went after his hips, he got Cutelaba down pretty easily and submitted him. So Antigulov, being a really good shot, like multi-chain wrestler, not even just shot wrestler, but being a very good shot wrestler, being a very good chain wrestler who can mix things up, and then a very good grappler with a very good back take game. I'm going to pick that to win out over Cutelaba early. But if it doesn't, there's no, Cutelaba or Antigulov becomes a much more like rote mechanical come forward striker who walks into stuff, and Cutelaba doesn't have a lot of deftness to his boxing, but man, does he throw with power, and he's got a hell of a chin, and he's got great cardio. So taking Antigulov, but that's just like one of the 2 very clear, easy ways this fight goes.
Yeah, it is hard to disagree with any of that. I just knew the moment I saw Ion. I actually believe it is Iwan Cutelaba. Yeah. Whatever. I don't know. Moldovan names.
Foreign countries. You're going to use the Anglican alphabet or the Arabic alphabet, which I now realize saying that is
they probably use Cyrillic now that you mention that, because he's from Moldova.
Whatever.
And but you know what they say about those Moldovans and their invisible W's, they love to stick in words. So Iwan Cutelaba, I knew the moment I saw him saying that he would be a frustrating love of my fighting life. That I don't think, I'm just going to make a bold statement here. At age 24, Iwan Cutelaba is like never going to like solve all of the problems that are plaguing him.
Probably not.
He's just not. He's light heavyweight, man. I don't have any faith in that happening, but I think he will be here for a while.
He's tough as shit, and he's 5 years into his career, so he's about to hit that plateau where even if he never gets way better at the big things, all the small things start to fine tune just due to experience and getting all the reps in and all that.
He's just the kind of fighter where he may have to have some of his youth beaten out of him before he realizes he can rely on experience and craft a little more. He is like the picture of an invincible young man kind of fighter, where he just believes that he cannot be destroyed, he cannot be killed or hurt. He has immense faith in his ability to walk into exchanges swinging full power. He doesn't fear grappling on the ground. With better submission artists, he will scramble and land shots, and he's just very, very assertive. And it comes down to like control and how well are you really prepared for the technical challenges of a given opponent. And Antigulov is going to wrestle him very hard, harder than anyone he's ever fought in the first round. And yeah, it's hard to look at Cirkunov's success and not think, well, Cutelaba is just going to make bad choices when he gets taken down by a much better submission grappler and not realize the danger he's in until it's too late.
Yeah.
And he, like I said, describing him, he's exactly the kind of fighter who could still win a fight after surviving that kind of moment, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But he's going to be in a very, very dangerous moment early. So I agree with you. I'm going with Antigulov, and I think it's all about the early submission.
Antigulov is the
of which Antigulov has a lot, by the way. It's not just a flyer pick. He tends to submit people in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very technical chain wrestler and back take specialist with a aggressive sub hunting game. And the thing, like, just to put a finer point on it, the thing to note from his win over Joachim Christensen, even though Christensen's nowhere near the athlete that Cutelaba is that, like, Antigulov was just kind of working to get his arms in some way that the one arm was around Christensen's neck and the other arm could put pressure on it. His other arm could grab it and put pressure, whether it's here or anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't matter that Christensen had both, like, one hand on the forearm and another glove in between the arm and his neck. Like, once that arm got locked around and he could squeeze it, he put on an insane amount of squeeze. You could just see Christensen was just there, and suddenly his face was red, and suddenly he's tapping, and just.
It's like watching Fedor choke somebody out with like the shortest rear naked you've ever seen, where like he's barely gotten the wrist across the neck, but the person feels it, and it's just like panic tapping right away.
Yeah, like he just has clearly an insane amount of squeeze that he can put on people. So it doesn't have to be like, he doesn't have to get you in that much danger for it to be a huge amount of danger. It's very like Paul Harris-like, you know?
And Paul Harris works a lot better at 205.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah, it does. Every step you go up, grappling gets worse and worse. Antigulov opened at -145, adjusted up and down to about -143, and has drifted down steadily but slowly to -161. Cutelaba opened at +105, adjusted up and down to +114, and has climbed steadily up to +134. So that feels all about right, considering I think how likely it is that if Antigulov doesn't finish this early, he loses it late.
Makes sense to me.
That brings us to a featherweight bout: Hakeem Dawodu versus Austin Arnett.
This is very clearly, Zane, a do-over. Like, remember when we brought in Hakeem Dawodu and we're like, this guy is a decorated Muay Thai fighter. This guy is a great athlete. He's got speed, he's got power, and he's got the striking skill. He's going to be great. And then he gets blasted on the chin in 15 seconds by
some Scotsman who had to go to
South African guy,
Africa to get his wins.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I'm blanking on his name because it was Danny Henry.
Henry. And I mean, credit, I am now like slowly turning the corner on Danny Henry.
How can you not after that? After the knockdown from hell and then 4 guillotines from hell, 4 attempts to finally finish. Well, Dawodu does everything he can to scramble free. So basically, like, okay, who else do we have on the roster who's like not a great athlete? You know, like certainly a couple steps below a guy like Dawodu, and who doesn't look like a huge finishing threat. And they're like, yeah, Austin Arnett. He kind of fits the bill. And the thing with Austin Arnett is that unlike Danny Henry, Arnett's big problem seems to be that he's very fixated on like one aspect of his game.
Anyway, what?
What? Was that stick jitsu I heard you say? I've never heard of that martial art.
Yeah.
Stick
Yeah,
jitsu. It's
that famous Washington stick jitsu camp.
They do eskrima there. And they don't check leg kicks.
No.
But yeah, that's kind of the problem. Like Arnett is Danny Henry like has ideas when he's fighting, and Austin Arnett just throws right hands. He's not like he doesn't have a style that looks like a dumb bruiser. You know, he wants to pick the shots for these right hands. He wants to be a precise technician. But hailing from the camp that produced Sam Sicilia, you have to wonder if he's been given the right tools to actually make that style work. And so it doesn't look like he has. The result is that most of his fights, he gets hit a lot or outworked while he is looking for these nice, precise shots. And he can land them. He's got power. He's got accuracy. He's got good form.
Yep.
He just tends to give away a lot of time and get shaken up by all the other stuff that's happening when he's like, it's so rude, his opponents just won't let him do the one thing he came to do, which is land a straight right hand. So yeah, Dawodu is like I'd have a good chance of picking Dawodu again if they ran the Henry fight back. He is a great athlete. He's very powerful. He's got good defense that gets better as the fight goes on the feet. And he's like a friggin' Muay Thai stadium champ. He's really good. So I'm going with Dawodu.
The one thing I did notice after going back for this fight and like looking at some of Dawodu's previous fights is that he does, especially early, so he's incredibly composed, but in a way that's not very reactive.
Exactly what happened to him against Danny Henry. He had way too much swagger. Yep. He felt the way I feel about his Thai stadium experience, where he went in there, he saw the first right hand Danny Henry threw. He didn't wait to feel the timing, to block a few. He's like, oh, Danny Henry's throwing a right hand and I'm right in front of him. I should counter inside with the left hook. That is a move that you do in like round 3. Yeah. That's seriously like the countering inside the right hand with the left hook, because if you fuck it up, you're getting cracked. You are getting hit hard, so you better have the timing. He was way too confident.
And you can watch even going back to other fights, like, you know, even against guys like Steven Seiler.
Yeah.
He's standing right there, and Steven Seiler will just, like, run in and crack him with a punch because he will just stand. He's like, okay, I'm right here to meet you. I'm not giving an inch of the ground I have. And
no respect. And I feel like hopefully that Danny Henry fight may have taught him.
Hopefully.
He needs to respect his opponents.
Humiliating lesson.
Yeah.
But that is a minor danger because Arnett he's got sharp, fast hands. He likes to, you know, he looks for the right hand. He throws well. You watch moments of his fight. He's kind of got that just guy thing where you watch moments of him fight and you're like, oh, Austin Arnett looks good. That's a nice combination. That he can crack a little. He looks a little slick, a little fast. The stuff he's doing, and then you watch defensively, and it's just a blank slate. That's the real problem.
Or you also, if you watch with an eye for like more combinations or varied setups, or
But especially the defense is a bigger problem than anything. That he gets back to the cage really easily. He gets flinchy about punches coming at him. He tends to like kind of turn and look and try like take his eye off his opponent as he's defending. He's wide open to the legs and body because it's sick jitsu, and you're not supposed to think about your legs or your body. Nobody got knocked out by a tummy punch or a Charlie horse.
You're not supposed to really think about your own chin either.
Yeah.
To be fair, you're just supposed to think about the other guy's chin, I guess. So
he just ends up defensively. It's just an open canvas for whatever his opponent wants to do.
Yeah.
And he might be able to crack Dawodu a couple times, especially early, but he's not a great wrestler. He's willing, but he's not great at it. And Dawodu's takedown defense has been a little hit or miss, but he's got all the right ideas of how to do it. So, I got to take Dawodu, especially as this fight goes on. Might take him a couple rounds, but
it's not like Arnett couldn't win. It just feels like it's within Dawodu's power to change the things he needs to change to have a really reliable chance of winning this kind of matchup.
Yeah. All he has to do is, like, it doesn't even have to be the whole MMA thing of like, oh, there's a punch coming near me. I'm going to take 10 steps back out of the pocket and back myself to the cage.
You're a great striker. Take one step back.
A half step.
Until you've timed it. And then come in with the left hook and knock the dude out.
Yeah.
You can do it. I've seen you do it. You know, you can land that hook. You just need to have some understanding that any opponent can finish you.
Yeah, there just needs to be that little bit of recognition of like, okay, you know what? I have to give a little ground. I can't give no ground at all.
You're not Iwan Cutelaba.
Yeah, whatever. It better be pronounced Iwan for you planning that in my mind, because
it really is. No, I mean I trust John Anik. He said so, and John Anik tends to do good research for his name pronunciation.
True. All right, fair enough. Odds on the fight. Arnett is a sizable underdog. Opened at plus 280, dropped down to plus 244, got back up as high as plus 290, and is currently back down to 281. Dawodu, a really sizable favorite, opened at minus 400, jumped up to minus 313, and fell back down to minus 375, and is currently out at minus 364. We just saw Dawodu get finished by Danny Henry, so I feel like there's a little play there. Maybe Dawodu needs the brakes pumped a little harder than that. But this is still a fight he should win.
I get why the odds are wide. I just hope nobody told Hakeem Dawodu.
Yeah, like he needs to have a little less confidence that he's just going to go walk over everybody.
But I think they made the right choice in what kind of opponent to give him.
Oh yeah. A striker who, like I say, is just kind of a defensively blank canvas should be a good matchup for him.
Mm-hmm. God, is that what Sigjitsu is for? Is that what like the UFC is just going to use Sigjitsu as like their capital O opponent training facility? That's a little cruel, isn't it?
It is a little. It's part of their whole development contract thing. They're doing through the Contender Series. There's a development contract that means you only fight Sigjitsu dudes from here on out.
No, if you're a Sigjitsu guy, you get a UFC contract which says that you cannot be cut off of a loss.
Oh, okay.
They just only give you like top athletic prospects who are there to destroy you for your terrible training tendencies. But you don't lose. You get a lifetime contract.
That's right.
Fighter. You can get killed by better prospects for 30 years and have a great career.
Oh, Lord. All right. It's not fair, but it's kind of fair.
If only for Rick Little taking those shots.
Lightweight bout next. Kajan Johnson, Islam Makhachev. And let's see.
This one's you.
All right, it is me. Yeah, I'm taking Makhachev, and I feel bad about that because I feel like Johnson has been, he's another fighter. It's like he's Matheus Nicolau 10 years later, or like 10 years delayed on the same understanding.
I think with even like additional sort of physical limitations.
Yeah.
Like I really have enjoyed Kajan Johnson's resurgence here. He's figured things out.
Yeah, like it used to be that he was always just this wild dude who would kind of go wherever the fight went, crack and brawl with people if that's what they wanted, get creative and just do a lot of funky stuff and make whatever work, always go to war. And he pretty clearly got sick of it. I even remember him at some point saying like, I got to stop fighting like this. And, went out and tried to refine his style. Took a couple of years off between 2015 and 2017 and came back with this very calm, collected, low volume, out-fighting counter style where he throws lots of kicks to get people to get frustrated and come after him and then looks to pick them off.
Which is great because he's always had pretty good understanding of striking technique and he's always had a kind of shaky chin and bad defense.
Yep.
So it seems like the right fit.
seemed like the right fit. It's been winning. It's been working for him. He still has enough wrestling and grappling to follow that up. Like his fight against Stevie Ray, he really took advantage of Ray's bad wrestling, defensive wrestling, to, not only lure him into counters, but then be able to chase him down and take him down and outwork him there. Problem is that giving ground to a fighter, and this is kind of like the same thing that we talked about with Rustam Khabilov versus Des Green, is that if you're going to give ground to somebody like Makhachev or like Khabilov, you're basically just letting them set up whatever entry they need to get their game going. And Makhachev is a great chain wrestler. Should be much clearly a better one than Kajan Johnson. And as long as he is, and Johnson's going to be inactive and is going to let himself get back into the cage while looking to counter, then he's going to give Makhachev chances to get in on his hips, get in on his knees and his ankles, and just chain wrestle him to the mat and outwork him there. So I got to take Makhachev.
Now, obviously, due to MMA math, Kajan Johnson wins this because he did destroy Adriano Martins, who only took a minute and a half to destroy Islam Makhachev.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there is a chance that he lures Makhachev into a big counter, and
there really is. Like, that's the thing is, there's no reason not to pick Makhachev in this fight. But
never been a consistent power puncher, even as a brawler.
Yeah,
Martins at least had power.
Yeah, but Johnson's always been pretty good at a lot of different things, and has now gotten like smart enough to understand how to fight each opponent. I won't be surprised if he comes in here with a really clear idea of like how he needs to treat clinch exchanges, how he needs to treat distance. I wouldn't be shocked if he came in looking really prepared to just deny Makhachev exchanges and pick him apart as slowly as possible. And it could work. Like, Makhachev is a willing striker. I think he still kind of thinks he's better at it than he really is.
Yeah, he kind of thinks he's Khabib, which even Khabib thinks that Khabib is a better striker than he really is.
Right, and already we've seen some evidence that he doesn't have Khabib's chin. But I think he also doesn't. I don't think he's as good a striker as Khabib. Like, let's be honest, Khabib has a funky, bad-looking striking style that is shockingly effective in a lot of different ways.
Well, that's also because Khabib's one of like the top 5 athletes in the UFC on pure just speed and strength. But
he also has one of those games where like Khabib's striking always looks like he'll show you something and it's like, oh, he has known how to do that.
Yeah.
Like the jab against Iaquinta is not the first time he's thrown a jab, but it's kind of the first time you notice like, oh, Khabib has a good jab.
Yep.
He'll just kind of pull something out of his kit, and it's like maybe that's the athletic ability, but it's like, wow, he can pick things up and just use them and understand over the course of a single fight how they work against a given opponent. And Makhachev doesn't have that.
No.
He looks much more like he is operating at maximum capacity when he is striking well. So I'm just not sold on Makhachev as a prospect still, even though I really like a lot of his game. But yeah, if he's going to be given the chance to come forward, kind of at some point he's going to figure out how to get Johnson down or how to get on his back. He's just too creative a grappler and scrambler and way, way too slick in the transitions to submissions on the ground. So at some point Johnson's giving up his neck, I think, and getting subbed.
Yep. Yeah, I can see that. I can also just see Makhachev just riding him out for 15 minutes, Johnson is a sizable underdog, opened at plus 300 and adjusted up to plus 488, has gotten up as high as plus 480, or 448 rather, gotten up as high as plus 480 and then dropped back down recently to plus 457. But a big underdog. Makhachev, I lost that. Makhachev. I'm too dry. It's too hot out here. Opened at minus 420, adjusted down to minus 572, and drifted out as low as minus 703, and is currently at minus 660.
Too dry. Makes me want to maybe picture you holding a piece of poster board that says "moist for Makhachev." You got to be nice and Nice and slicked up to pronounce that name.
You do. Oh, God.
Lubricate
that's a terrible picture now in my own mind. Okay. That brings us to a welterweight bout. Jordan Meehan versus Alex Morono. And, man, yeah, take it away.
Well, we have it's a bizarre fight.
It's a really bizarre fight because I really thought I knew exactly how to pick this fight before I went in and watched tape on it.
Yeah, like to me, the obvious big distinction is that like Jordan Meehan, there's a weird contrast between these two guys because Jordan Meehan looks, you've made the Jessica Eye comparison a few times. Jordan Meehan looks like a very good fighter in a lot of moments.
He looks like an absolutely elite pro fighter, and the difference is that he can look that way for a whole round.
Yeah. But as my Heavy Hands co-host Phil McKenzie said, he seems to just hate fighting.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys who has been doing this since he was like 17, and clearly, you know, probably was coerced to some degree by his father into doing it. His father, who I think like sexually assaulted a maid at some UFC show in like a hotel. So probably not the greatest guy on earth. And it just seems like it's kind of, I don't know, it makes me kind of sad to watch Jordan Meehan fight because every time I just get the impression like he doesn't know how to do anything else.
Yeah.
And it seems like he would want to because like he gets like anxious and gets like he feels the pressure when he's fighting. You know, it's like he's a 17-year-old and his dad is watching at the sidelines of the karate tournament.
He's very much like a fighter for whom winning is fun, competing not fun.
Winning is fun because it's just like winning is like having a successful day at work. You come home, you get your paycheck, nothing happened. Competing, you have to love your job to want to compete at it. Yeah, and that's the problem. You know, you give him somebody like Eric Silva, Jordan Meehan is still capable of just being technically sharp enough to.
Yeah, he was winning that whole fight. There was never a point where Eric Silva was challenging Jordan Meehan. Yeah.
And so the parallel is Alex Morono, who doesn't look at all like a fighter. He doesn't look like he has the body of a fighter. He's like flabby and he's skinny fat. He is the skinny fattest fighter in the UFC right now. He's like this sort of weird looking little guy, but he seems to.
He's way up on the balls of his feet.
Yeah,
super awkward, stiff.
He was taught by whoever taught Leonard Garcia how to throw punches and move his feet, but he seems to like and enjoy fighting a lot, and that makes him quite good at it. He's much better than he seems at first glance. So he's kind of the opposite of Jordan Meehan. And I don't know. I think Morono can win this fight.
Oh, he can. Absolutely.
I'm going to pick him is what I'm presaging because I think what it really comes down to is like what do you give back to a guy like Jordan Meehan after he has early success? And Morono is a guy who is always going to be giving something back. You know, like I have a very hard time imagining Morono taking a few clean shots, getting hurt possibly, and not swinging for the guy's chin who is coming after him to follow up. And I think the other thing too about Morono is that this might be another difference between him and Meehan. People do underestimate how intelligent he is as a fighter. He chooses the right tactics. Nothing looks good. It all looks wrong. Yeah. But he does choose the correct tactics for his opponents. He's harder to hit than he seems like he's going to be. He's a better counterpuncher than he seems like he's going to be. He certainly hits harder than he seems like he's going to. He's just I think he's a much more clever striker than you would guess looking at his really bizarre way of fighting.
But he also did just get like out hustled by Kaita Nakamura.
Yeah, you know. Yeah. But the thing is that Kaita Nakamura is an out hustler. And Jordan Meehan isn't. Like that's the problem is what does Jordan Meehan do to stop Morono from being Alex Morono?
You know, knock him out, but
sure, yeah, there's absolutely a chance. Morono is wide open for that kind of shit.
The thing I'm struggling with is it actually like watching the tape of like a whole round, like, oh man, Jordan Meehan is so much better at literally everything than Alex Morono.
Yep,
just miles better. an incredibly much more technical puncher and kicker and wrestler and grappler, and just has a clear understanding of the fight in every position. And then, yeah, you watch somebody put a hard fight on him, and he just fades out. He just slowly gets frustrated. He looks like he doesn't want to do it. He just hangs out in position.
Like
and gets beat up.
I know what you mean when you say you watch the footage and you're like, I don't know anymore about what's going to happen. But honestly, it's hard for me to think of this fight and not just come back to Jordan Meehan hates to lose and Alex Morono loves to fight.
Yeah, and I do come back to that. It's just part of me also comes back to the idea that maybe, like, is Morono just good enough to make Jordan Meehan really fight hard?
Yeah, like maybe he's not quite surpassing the barrier at which Meehan becomes uncomfortable.
Yeah, like if he's just not technically a good enough striker because he's not a good enough wrestler, like is he, because he's not the athlete that Weber Meek is, or that Mech is by any stretch of anybody's imagination.
Definitely not.
And he's not the technician that Thiago Alves or Bilal Muhammad are.
Nope. Not even close.
And those are the three guys to beat Jordan Meehan lately. Before that is Matt Brown and Tyron Woodley.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to go all the way back. Like, you have to go all the way back to, like, Mike Ricci to find the fight with it that Jordan Meehan has lost against somebody who is similarly just dogged and nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And that does give me a lot of pause.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
I don't feel safe.
I'm going to pick Alex Morono, too.
Ooh, you're going with me. Okay. All right.
Well,
now I'm more nervous. I don't know what to think now.
Because, like, it's just one of those things of, like, Morono probably swings hard enough to make him. I don't know. You know what? No. I'm going with my Meehan gut.
Okay, all right.
I'm going with Jordan Meehan, and I feel weird about it, but I just don't think that Morono's actually good enough to make Meehan feel like he's not winning.
I think that's fair. Yeah, Morono has a style too. Like it can make you feel really good or really bad to fight him because he hits you, but also like you see him come out and he's like way too tall. His chin is up in the air. You see every punch coming until the first one catches you. It's like that could be a confidence boost for a guy like Jordan Meehan as well. He's like, oh, I had this fight when I was 19 against this guy.
I'm going to pick Jordan Meehan, but I feel really dumb doing it. So
I feel very dumb picking Morono, so I think we're on the same page. Both feel like completely unreliable picks.
Yep. All right. Odds on this. Morono, Morono opened at -110, dropped down to -127, and then is slowly drifted back up to -111. Meehan opened at -130, adjusted up to +104, as high as +104, and has slowly drifted back down to -113. Dead even odds. That is fine by me. It's just one clearly much more technical fighter against one who really enjoys fighting a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It takes us to a lightweight bout. Alexander Hernandez versus Olivier Aubin-Mercier. And this is another fight that I have questions about. I mean, the baseline comes down to, we even said it going into his fight with Hernandez's fight with, what's its name?
With Dariush.
Beneil Dariush. We really like the basics of how Alexander Hernandez fights. An aggressive, power-punching wrestle boxer who, with an aggressive takedown game and an aggressive headhunting striking style. And unless he knocks Dariush out early, which can happen, I'm not taking him to beat Dariush. And he went out and he knocked Dariush out early. That is impressive for Hernandez, but even going back and watching that fight, it tells you nothing.
Nothing.
Like, he just caught him stepping in with like one big punch. That was it.
You could say maybe it tells you that he understands, like he's a smart enough fighter to understand the situation he's in, where it's like, I'm on short notice against a ranked lightweight. But I should go out there
like that. You go
and try to knock him out early. But yeah, exactly. Like
you go look at any footage that's out there of him, and that's just how he fights. It's why I like him as a fighter. It's as a basic prospect. He's aggressive. He's got a decent wrestling game, and he throws with power.
Which are the things I think that you've often said, like the three things you look for, more or less.
Yeah. And that could still be enough to beat Olivier Aubin-Mercier. The big thing being with Aubin-Mercier that even up into the Evan Dunham fight, he's got a real problem with backing himself to the cage.
Mm-hmm.
And just like being out in space and doing the I'm going to take 5 steps back to avoid a punch thing and getting caught on the cage and getting tagged, trying to move off the cage with his hands down and trying to be slicker than he is. And there's a distinct lack of good striking defense in Aubin-Mercier's game. But he's also like just a much more practiced, well-rounded fighter with a very good wrestling and grappling game and a much more composed style. We've seen him gas a little late in fights too. Like that Tony Martin fight, he faded late. But we've also seen him, turn it up on Drew Dober slowly over time and submit him and beat Tibog Goody in the 3rd round and things like that. So I feel like Aubin-Mercier has sounds like he has a good grasp of like, he was talking about this fight in an interview with Bloody Elbow a couple days ago where he said, I know this is going to be a rough first round. This guy's fast. He's going to come out chasing me hard. I think the fight's going to be hard early. And I think if he kind of has that in mind and can avoid Hernandez early, I still don't have any real idea of what kind of fighter Hernandez becomes as the fight goes on and as opponents start to time and figure out his speed. Because that kind of speed and aggression, it tends to be shocking early in fights, and then fighters get comfortable, get used to the rate the guys are throwing their hands. Guys tend to lose a step as the fight goes on, just slow down enough to be timeable. And I've seen more. I trust a lot more of Olivier Aubin-Mercier's game as that goes on. So I got to pick him here.
Yeah, I'm with you across the board on this one once again. You do get a bit of a GSP vibe from Aubin-Mercier, don't you? He's
You mean just the voice and the
not just the Quebecois accent. He's the right kind of fighter for Firas Zahabi, I think.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that is not always easy to understand as a fan or a spectator, where like you watch him, he doesn't seem to be developing in the same way that other fighters usually do. He doesn't seem to be growing like this, becoming a lot more aggressive and developing like this crazy killer instinct necessarily. He doesn't seem to be like, I don't know. He and at no point does he seem to like bloom with confidence and just come out and do something. But like slowly, inexorably, he's turning into a really good fighter.
Oh yeah, yeah.
This sort of like, you want to see a guy. Okay, he goes to a new boxing coach, and suddenly he comes out, and now he's boxing, and that has not been the way that Aubin-Mercier has developed. No. We've seen fights of his where it's like, okay, he's worked on like this one striking technique. He's worked on this one thing, and he's fighting in a way that he doesn't have to do anything else but that. And he's trying to work on his striking. You can see fights where it's pretty clear Aubin-Mercier is like, okay, I'm going to work on my kickboxing tonight.
It's kind of like, what if Nick Hine had really long arms and like a really good natural grappling game to go with the rest of his style?
Yeah.
Where you like 5 years in, you're like, oh, hey, he's added a right hand to his left hook. Like,
he's got a safety net.
Yeah.
Of his grappling game that against most opponents, it's relatively safe to go to.
Yeah.
He can rely on it. And as a result, I think he's like a cerebral enough fighter that he and Zahabi together have been able to slowly develop his game in the UFC, because it's not like boxing where you can build the exact style you want for your guy and then level his opposition so he can develop it. So he's like against really bad versions of the guys he will someday be fighting. Aubin-Mercier has developed largely in the UFC against pretty good opponents. And so he has had to like pare back what he does and just like piece by piece add in elements of his game. So it's kind of hard to keep track of. It's a little bit like watching Ryan Bader, where you don't notice how good he is until he's really good. And I think Aubin-Mercier is like getting to that point where he's starting to look a lot more composed and confident. He looks like he's not, he has fewer doubts, where he's still not this like crazy aggro confident fighter, but he seems like very clinically aware that he can do whatever he wants at any moment, that he's always in control enough to change things up. And Alexander Hernandez is probably going to be dangerous in the first round, and that's about it. I think Aubin-Mercier is going to fight the right way to take a lot of those options away from him. He's not going to go out there exchanging left hands like Beneil Dariush did. And as the fight goes on, he's going to grapple as he needs to wear Hernandez down. So I think this is like maybe, I mean, granted, Hernandez is not really proven. He's in like a Josh Emmett situation where he had one really notable win, but I do think this might be like it has a potential to be kind of a corner turning performance from Aubin-Mercier as well, where this is a chance for him to really look impressive.
Absolutely. Odds on the fight. Mercier is a slight favorite, but not a very big one. Opened at minus 120, adjusted up and down to minus 145, and then just in the past hour or two has gone from minus 134 to minus 122. So some late money coming in on Hernandez. Hernandez opening at minus 120, adjusting up and down a bunch to about plus 118, and then falling slowly, and then just dipping down just lately to minus 102. So, I mean, I honestly feel like, I know, Hernandez has been on LFA and some things like that, but I think a lot of this is really just people betting on a fighter that they don't really know how he's going to look in a tough fight. And they're just, they know he got an early knockout. He's really confident. He knocked out a tough guy in Beneil Dariush, but it's also a tough guy who doesn't have a great chin. Yeah.
And it was like, what was his best win before Dariush?
Yeah.
Chris Pissarro at RFA 41, a 14-6 regional fighter. Like he's he doesn't have that much valuable experience. There's very little to say how Alex Hernandez deals with any kind of elite opponent. And like,
especially like I say, being an aggressive fight, good wrestler who has like, power and who can just go after guys like that, especially regionally, you're just not going to face a lot of people who can stand up to that, who, even if you're in a longer fight and he's gone all 15 minutes before, like it's just going to be you taking people down over and over and being able to punish them for not being good wrestlers and good athletes the way you are.
Yeah. That's why I think this might be the kind of fight where Aubin-Mercier basically says, like, I am elite.
Yeah.
I'm an elite talent. I am ready to step into the real contention after this.
Yeah. All right. That brings us to the first of our three really, really good bouts on the card. And it's Joanna Jedrzejczyk versus Tecia Torres.
Man. It's a tricky one. It's hard not to favor Joanna. She's just had an outstanding title run. She's in. There's a lot of parallels here with Joanna and Jose Aldo, where she like Jose just lost 2 title fights in a row. I will say that, like, unlike Jose Aldo, Joanna she wasn't in there against Max Holloway. Let's be fair. But she did show better signs in terms of being able to overcome the bad style matchup that lost her the title. At the very least, like getting knocked out in the first round is a lot worse than going 5 rounds, losing a decision that probably should have been a little closer at least than it was. Is an okay look. And it was a kind of fight where you're like, yeah, okay, in an imaginary world with 7-round championship fights, Joanna may have been about to work her way back into that.
Yeah.
She's still tireless. She still can push a crazy pace and throw a lot of volume. She is, I think, more than ever, it's become kind of clear like what Joanna struggles with. We have now seen this, left hooks. Yeah, we have seen this division now throw enough variety of opponents against her where it's like, okay, the things that gave her problems with Rose, she didn't like being pressured by an opponent who could cut off the ring. She did not like not having the reach advantage, or at least the practical reach advantage, where Rose is a good enough striker that her reach is a real problem. And she wasn't comfortable like stepping into range to reverse that pressure. That was the real problem, is that's a fight where we really needed to see Joanna's willingness to pressure come out, and it didn't.
Yeah.
Go on.
I was gonna say, that's why I'm going into it. I don't know if you remember when we were talking about it. I was saying, like, I got to pick Rose Namajunas in this, not just because like I saw Joanna get cracked with 3 left hooks and I have no idea what to do with any of them the first time. Yeah. I don't really think that's going away, but also just because you can see the fighter over time that Joanna has wanted to become as she became a better championship fighter, and it's a volume out fighter. Yeah. It is a fighter who stays at range and dances at a distance and fills that space with volume. And so, despite the fact that she has a great clinch game and could impose a great clinch game on somebody like Rose Namajunas, who has been weak to a very strong clinch game in the past, there's no desire in Joanna's mind to be that fighter.
Right. Even though that is precisely what she needed. Like in the 5th round of that fight, she needed to stop retreating. Just don't have to move forward. Stop moving back. Let Rose run into you and beat her up inside.
Yep.
She needed a lot more of that, and that was the troubling thing. Is like not troubling, but it more solidified in my head like what Joanna's style is when she's not just able to run roughshod all over an opponent. However, she feels like, what is her style when the chips are down? And yeah, volume out fighter. It's like, what if Katlyn Chookagian committed to her jab?
Yeah.
That's basically Joanna Jedrzejczyk's style. And like in a lot of ways, Tecia Torres is a much more forgiving opponent than Rose Namajunas. She doesn't reach is a notable difference. Tecia Torres probably has the shortest arms in the top 10 in this division. I haven't checked, but she's got very short arms and she's very short in general. She's small for this division, despite, you know, she's really thick. She's really muscular and strong.
Yeah.
But she's small. So that right there is Joanna gets a kind of fight where she can touch somebody with her jab at ranges where they cannot touch hers, cannot touch her with theirs, which is exactly the kind of range matchup she's comfortable with. There is, however, the fact that like Tecia Torres can be really boring and really committed to being boring in a way that works. Like if Tecia Torres can give Joanna the kind of fight where she feels like she does want to pressure, where she has to come forward, and Tecia Torres is doing a lot of pot shotting and moving around. We have not really seen Joanna against. We've not really seen Joanna beat like an able mover and pot shotter. You know what I mean? Like we've seen her pressure against the likes of Jessica Penne, who like doesn't know how to strike almost, is just really like many steps behind. Tecia Torres has footwork, she has speed and agility, and can maybe give Joanna like a really frustrating kind of matchup here. And it really, I'm still wondering where Joanna is at mentally after both of those Rose fights, because she was clearly in a better place for the second fight than she was in the first one. I think she lent a lot of credence to the idea that the weight cut did have a lot to do with how she showed up in the first fight.
Yeah.
But she also like she didn't change anything.
No.
That was the really concerning thing, is like she came in thinking it was just the weight cut. She didn't change shit about how she was going to approach Rose. And so she lost 5 rounds of the fight she was fixing to lose the first time before she got knocked out.
And the troubling part coming out of that fight is, honestly, I don't think that it's in her head at all. I don't think that she feels she's now like questioning herself or doubting anything. The troubling part would be coming out that she believes she won the second fight.
Right. Yeah. There's more of like the doing the same thing and expecting different results kind of problem.
Yeah. Where she's just
like
so
she
confident.
hasn't. Her confidence needs to be shaken maybe. So she's like, I need to reevaluate and change things. Instead, she might just be who she is. And yeah, Tecia Torres is like a smart enough fighter. She could figure out something to do there. The problem is Ticia's also not super powerful. She's rarely aggressive enough. And even though she's significantly better than the likes of Rose Namajunas in the clinch, like she's lost stronger and she's a better wrestler, she's also in there, you know, against like one of the best defensive wrestlers and clinch fighters in this division. So I have to pick Joanna.
Yeah,
I just
don't. I think that's the thing. The unfortunate thing for Torres is that Joanna doesn't have to change to beat her. There's like I don't know what the avenue for Tecia Torres winning this fight would be. Is she gonna knock her out?
Yeah,
probably not. You know, she's at a severe range disadvantage, and she's always been, she never sits down on anything. She has some power, but she's very unwilling to sit down on any combinations to turn that power into actual punches.
Yeah.
And she's almost certainly, even as a pretty good wrestler and very good grappler, she's almost certainly not going to take Joanna down. And
she tends to get slow. There. She tends to get slow fights out of her opponents.
Yeah, but I think that just favors Joanna, who's throws more and is willing to fight at a slow pace.
That's the thing. That's what I'm concerned about. Joanna throws more because her opponents chase her. Do you remember like her fight with Juliana Lima?
Yeah.
She clearly won, but she landed like 15 to 20 good shots.
Yeah, but she clearly won. Like that's the thing. Is it
yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously, yeah. Not having a clear path. What I'm saying is though is that going after an opponent is really not something you want to. It's not that it's not what she's best at. She's not very good at it.
Yeah, no, she's not. But I just don't think that it's like so. If she doesn't go after Torres enough, then Torres is just out at range, not doing anything. And
it does always come back to what is Tecia going to do about it?
Yeah, yeah. Like she's got incredibly short arms. What's she going to do? Stand out of range and be like, "Ah, can't punch me here." Okay.
Yeah,
you know, she can pull a Drakkar close.
That would be amazing. Joanna gets deducted 4 points and just Joanna loses on point deductions because Tecia Torres won't stop taunting her. That would be great.
But like that's kind of the problem with a matchup like that, even where it's like, oh well, I can force a really slow-paced fight where you don't do that much out of you, Daniel Tamer. It's like, okay, well, just win with what few strikes I do land. Yeah, I just don't see enough avenues for Torres to change the tenor of this, and she doesn't have the power to stop Joanna on any one strike, and she doesn't like to sit down in the pocket and really exchange. She tends to give a lot of ground when she gets pressured, even though she can pressure herself, and when she does pressure, I think the biggest problem for Torres is that when she does pressure, she almost never pressures without clinching. She never pressures without stepping all the way in, wrapping her opponent up, and then trying to work a clinch game. And that's usually a nightmare for opponents against Joanna. If you're going to clinch up with her, she's usually going to beat you in the clinch and then separate back to range and go back to working. So I got to pick Joanna all the way here. Torres will make the fight fun. She's tough. She tends to make fights hard on an opponent, but I don't see how she turns a tough or interesting fight into a win. Torres is the underdog pretty reasonably, opened at plus 265, dropped down to plus 206 or so, and has risen a bit and evened out at about plus 230. Joanna opened at minus 385, got up to minus 272, dropped down to minus 289, where she's more or less evened out at minus 288 right now. I think it could be wider. I think that's a little bit of the, Joanna lost to Rose, and Tecia Torres beat Rose Namajunas once, so clearly the tables have, Joanna, Joanna may never change and solve the problems that meant she lost to Rose Namajunas, but I don't know that anybody else in that division has the tools that Namajunas does.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking too much of what's going on with Jose right now and where he might be headed, but part of me does wonder, like, what if Joanna's just had a really long, tough career with a lot of really hard weight cuts and, like,
yeah,
she's peaked already.
Much like the big comparison there would be much like Jose Aldo. I mean, because she's only 6 years into her career. By all means, Joanna should just be at her peak right now.
She had a long kickboxing career before that, though.
She did. That's true. But as a 30-year-old, she should be still in the midst of her.
I hope so.
But because there is the thing with the only real comparison, especially there, I see is that Joanna would pretty clearly be best served to go to 125 and stop cutting weight and just plow through that fresh division and fight Valentina Shevchenko in a really pretty big fight. But she's set on redeeming herself in her former weight class,
right? Which
is exactly where Jose Aldo kind of seems to be, where everybody's like, go to 145. And he's like, I've always been at go to 155. He's like, I've always been at 145, and I can be champion at 145 again. And
it almost makes you wonder, like, how hard is it? It's very difficult to go from contender mentality to champion mentality.
Yeah.
How hard is it to go from champion mentality back to contender mentality? Where, like,
I think it's nearly impossible.
It's like Jose in a way, and maybe Joanna, like, clinging now because they had to learn to be like defenders rather than takers. And so now they're like, well, I've already proven I can defend this belt. And so it's like too scary to go out and try and do something else. You know, like it's daunting to think, oh, moving weight, a whole new challenge is like starting over again. But realistically, you're not starting over again. You've learned from all the years you had at this division, and probably it's better for your body, so you'll look better. But yeah, I would have loved to have seen Joanna move up to 125 after that, because there's just no reason. Like,
it would be nice to see Joanna return to the kind of fighter who just marched into the clinch behind flurries and then just destroyed people with clinch offense, but that's clearly not who she wants to be. So
I don't know. The champion at 125 is Nico Montano. I think it might really be hard to try a few new things in that division. You know, really hard to stretch your legs at 125, where, like, Valentina Shevchenko.
You have to run through the likes of Alexis Davis and
You might have to beat somebody like Poliana Botelho or whatever to win a title shot. I mean, can you do that? Can you?
Botelho is actually at 115. But
which name was it? Cachoeira,
yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember. I'm very bad with Brazilian names. You're gonna have to run through the likes of Cachoeira for a title shot. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like Romero now possibly staying at 185. Why? But besides the point.
Because, who wants to be the dude who has to take on Corey Anderson?
What did you watch? Anthony Smith, former middleweight, knock out Shogun Hua and instantly become a top 10 light heavyweight. And he's like, I don't know. I think I should fight a top 10 middleweight again.
Yeah.
It's so easy up there. Anyway.
Whatever. All right. Featherweight bout next. Jose Aldo, Jeremy Stephens. And, I mean, there's no easy way to say this, but this is Jose Aldo. This is where the rubber meets the road. And we find out, are Jose Aldo's problems are they compounded by deterioration, or are they just Max Holloway specific and an inability to adjust?
I think it's probably always a bit of both.
Yeah, it is a bit of both. How much of one is it? How much is it deterioration?
How much do you believe that 5 years ago Aldo could have won the fights with Max Holloway?
Yeah. And I honestly kind of don't. But that's why I'm picking Jose Aldo here. That's the first thing. Is I think Stephens absolutely could crack him and knock him out. But Stephens has never been the kind of fighter to really successfully put a controlled beating on somebody that breaks them. Like, I mean, he's won fights where he's just been able to beat somebody up who's past it for, 3 rounds. Like, he beat Gilbert Melendez and he beat Renan Barão. But
he didn't beat him up for 3 rounds. He
yeah,
lost too.
It's at that point, it's not that like those as elite fighters, they were never like overawed by Jeremy Stephens' immense power and just like, oh my God, I'm taking these punches and it's just all building, and now I've just been shocked into this. I've just been blasted into this knockout loss. It was like, okay, they can see that Jeremy Stephens is a somewhat limited offensive kickboxer who hits hard, and they can see the strikes coming and avoid a lot of them and have a reasonably competitive or even not that competitive fight that they lose. Like, even Gilbert Melendez hobbled on one leg. It was still a lot of Jeremy Stephens beating up that leg. Like, there were still a lot of competitive boxing exchanges in that fight with a hobbled Gilbert Melendez who could just kind of see like what Jeremy Stephens was doing, even if he couldn't prevent it. And I don't think that Jose Aldo is... I'm trusting in my heart that Jose Aldo is not... Like, he's more technical than Renan Barão. He doesn't have...
What?
The same kind... Like, Renan Barão, when he lost an athletic step, he fell into this weird... like this weird sort of Twilight Zone space where it was suddenly like a lot of what was really good about me and my style was how far I could push people physically, like how much I could punish people and just be like this athletic force who could drill them with leg kicks, swarm them with flurries, scare them off, and just kind of, play a pared down version of the Jose Aldo game. And when he started, especially when he got knocked out a couple times, we saw Renan Barão get into this kind of panic zone where it was just suddenly like his chin's not even bad. Renan Barão isn't chinny.
No. He got hit even in their second fight a million times before Dillashaw could knock him out. And
he's been knocked out 0 times since then. None.
Not even by Jeremy Stephens.
Not even by Jeremy Stephens. The problem is that Barão gets hit a little and he starts to go, oh my God, I might get knocked out again. I'm not the same dominant fighter I used to be. And then it just, he gets an adrenaline dump, his cardio goes, and he's just not the same fighter.
It tells you everything about how the profound impact that like mental state has on a fighting performance. Because like, I remember when Barão had a really competitive fight with Cole Escovedo, which is like not a fighter you would expect to hang with him when you watched him as a champ. But his mentality at the time was that of someone like pursuing the title, feeling good, feeling confident. So he like composed himself all the way through what was admittedly a very close, very tough fight that he might have lost.
Yeah.
And that's just not the same anymore. And the question is a lot of like, where is Jose Aldo at right now?
And what I see out of Jose Aldo in the 2 fights with Max Holloway isn't a fighter struggling with that kind of composure. I mean, this is still because it's like he got knocked out and came back and beat Frankie Edgar. This isn't somebody who just was like, I was worried about that. I was worried like, is Frankie Edgar going to beat Jose Aldo this time because Jose Aldo doesn't have that confidence in himself anymore.
Nope, he's going to beat him better than he did the first time.
Yep. And he came out and he looked great against Frankie Edgar. And then what we saw in Max Holloway fights were 2 fights. One fight where Aldo didn't really, I think didn't really respect Holloway the first time around, and just kind of was like, "Oh, I'm going to show this kid what's going on." He clipped him up in the first round, and they started unloading. He started like, "Okay, I can hit this guy. I can hurt him. I can see that he's hurt. I am just going to put a beating on this kid." And Holloway didn't go away.
Then the fight started.
Yeah. And then the second time around, I kind of thought, well, Jose Aldo's going to see the success he had the first time. He's going to go back out and he's going to try to do that again. And he didn't. He went out and he tried to have a reserved, like, okay, I'm going to, sit down my combinations when I need them. I'm going to fight a smart fight. I'm going to be good and just like keep to my tools, keep everything. I'm going to kick more. I'm going to do all the things I should have done to game plan for this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And Holloway said, how much do you want to do that? Because I'm just going to force a fight on you. I'm just going to push you to do as much of that as you possibly can. And he ran Jose Aldo out. Like, he just ran him out of gas. And it was a totally different methodology and way of doing it. But
and yet the exact same result.
And yet the exact same result. And Jeremy Stephens, he has become a much more deft kickboxer than he ever used to be.
Mm-hmm.
He has a jab and a low kick that he consistently goes to now. He catches himself swinging wild and recomposes himself and like says, okay, I'm going back to my jab. I'm going back to my low kick. I'm waiting to find my power shots.
Pressure footwork is significantly better than it used to be.
But when he winds up with power, he still winds up. You can still see what Jeremy Stephens is doing coming. It's still there. And he's fought some dudes that are dangerous, but aren't deft defensive fighters. And didn't see it coming eventually, you know?
He also lost exactly the fight I think both you and I are expecting in this one against Renato Moicano very recently.
Yeah.
he unimpressively lost to somebody who wanted to control distance, slow the pace, and pick him
really
apart.
Since that Moicano fight and since the Frankie Edgar fight, those two losses, I've seen a lot more of the composure out of Stephens.
Yeah.
But he also then, he lost the first round pretty convincingly, both to Doo Ho Choi and Josh Emmett.
Yeah, and the ability to adjust, like there's good things to take away from pretty much all these fights. But the thing is like who in this division can probably replicate what Frankie Edgar and Renato Moicano did?
Yep.
And probably
even if you're minding your P's and Q's defensively, if you're not Josh Emmett, who's just throwing all the same power shots to the same target over and over and over again, or Doo Ho Choi, who's also throwing all the same power shots to all the same target over and over and over and over again, then I think Stephens is still a beatable kickboxer at the elite levels. And I got to take Jose Aldo to not be that washed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's sad. Sometime soon, Jose Aldo is going to be done.
Yeah, I mean, and he could. There's every chance that Stephens will just be patient, be collected with his jab and his low kick, not really do a lot to be in this fight, and then catch Jose Aldo in the second or third round.
He could fight an absolutely stupid fight, or Jose Aldo could fight a perfect one, and it might just change. Like it might just not matter. That's the thing. Yeah. The thing about the second Max Holloway fight is that Jose did make those adjustments.
Yep.
He did change things up. He looked better. He looked so good defensively.
Yep.
He was so hard to hit. It was just like he had to start exchanging.
Yeah.
He had to answer back.
Yeah. Holloway just was like, okay, well, I'll just come in and keep pushing you and keep pushing you. And what are you going to do about it? But Jeremy Stephens doesn't have that kind of consistency to him.
Yeah. It's just like that. There's a bit of both sides of the equation there. Yeah. Both sides of the question are asked by that result. Like, does that emphasize that it's just a really bad style matchup, and no matter what Jose does, is he going to lose? Or does it emphasize that no matter how he tries to adjust, he's just kind of more past it now than he used to be? Yeah. That he can make the right decisions, but his body just like that. The real thing is that the pace was much slower to start with in the second Holloway fight, and Aldo still slowed down at like exactly the same point.
Yeah.
And that's a little concerning. You're like, okay, he's not throwing that much. Yes, he's putting power, but I saw him have that fight with Chad Mendes. I have seen him last through more than this. Jeremy Stephens is not going to do what Max Holloway did to him. But if the whole physical package is taking a little bit of a decline, then it might not matter. It could be durability or reaction time or whatever that has just fallen off a little bit since the second Max Holloway fight. By the way, I have long thought that the second fight with Chad Mendes probably took something permanent out of both Aldo and Mendes. It was a really hard fight. Yeah.
I was gonna say the second Max Holloway fight was actually a much faster pace in the first round than the first one.
Well, it looked a little more like Jose not just trying to load up on big bombs.
Yeah, I think he tried to play a more conserved game, but that's what I say is Holloway only threw 32 strikes in the first round of their first fight. He was very passive. In the second one, he in that first round threw 89. So he actually did come out and just push a ridiculous pace on Jose.
I mean, he recognized what his advantage was in the matchup.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was I going to say, though? Shit. Oh, the Mendes fight. The other thing, too, is like not just thinking about Aldo's mental state, but those were some brutal beatings he took from Max Holloway.
Yeah.
And like when you get to a point in your career where you mostly dominate and then suddenly you start getting your ass kicked, or at the very least going toe to toe with more of your opponents, like you're clearly declining, I think. At the very least, I don't know, you've been figured out in some way by the next generation of challengers or whatever, but Aldo is not the same Aldo, and it's just inevitable.
Oh, yeah, unquestionably.
So the thing is, the question for me is, does Jose Aldo have enough Josh Emmett in him to let Jeremy Stephens into this fight? Or does he have enough Renato Moicano is maybe the better way to say it? Because Moicano is in a lot of ways like Jose Aldo. He's a grappler who likes to strike. It's the thing that he has a real fondness for. He seems to really enjoy boxing craft. He enjoys working behind the jab. He enjoys circling and like controlling an opponent. He really enjoys managing an opponent, which is why like on such little experience, he was able to show up in that Jeremy Stephens fight looking like he'd been there 100 times before. I think he just gets a kick out of fighting a smart fight, which does Aldo. But like Aldo, he will also swing like a maniac tactically in order to back opponents off. And even against Stephens, there were a couple times where he planted his feet and just swung. Moicano is at an age where I would expect him to get away with that still.
Yeah.
There are going to be some really risky moments in this fight because, as we've seen from Jeremy Stephens in these recent matchups, he does make adjustments. He might still be a dumb swinger sometimes, and for 3 rounds against Moicano, he was mostly a dumb swinger, a slugger and nothing more. But against both Emmett and Doo Ho Choi, like he did settle in to the fight. He took his coaching advice, he redisciplined himself, and went back to his basics. He went to his footwork. He started everything off with his jab and started throwing in combinations, not loading up so much on each shot. And if he can make that adjustment and Aldo is put into a position where he feels like he has to swing back, I think we're looking at a potentially a fight that could at any moment go either way. But it is still hard to watch Jeremy Stephens get outpointed by a very inexperienced Renato Moicano and not think that Jose Aldo, who after his last shocking knockout loss came back and against Frankie Edgar fought that kind of fight, a perfectly disciplined, cautious, balanced boxing performance.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting that again. My hope is that with all the work Aldo has been doing on his boxing since then, he's been working with Robert Garcia, who trained, Marcos Maidana and trains Mikey Garcia now, and has worked with a lot of great boxers. And Aldo's been working on like loosening up and working with high level boxers, and hopefully he will have yet another leg to his career. And this isn't the beginning of the end, as it might seem.
Yeah. All right. Aldo is a very slight favorite, which also just kind of goes to show where he is in his career.
Yep.
Opened at -135, adjusted up and got up as high as -120, and then has dropped down to 137, has evened out and climbed a little bit up to -126. So those odds not moving a lot, but not very, not a high favorite too. Stephens opened at -105, adjusted up and down to -104, got up as high as +114 before drifting out to +102. Just barely an underdog. I think Aldo still deserves to be a bigger favorite, basically. I don't think... Like, I need to see him lose this fight to Jeremy Stephens before I feel like, okay, yeah, this is no longer the Jose Aldo of even a couple years ago.
as a huge fan of his, I understand it from a fear perspective.
Yeah.
I'm like, I also want to overreact, but also I look and I'm like, Conor McGregor and Max Holloway are kind of good.
Yeah, and like I say, I think you look. I went in with different expectations for every one of those, or for both those Holloway fights, and I think they very dramatically, like, they have very specific takeaways for both Holloway and Aldo. One of which being, like, it was both fighters learned how to fight one another from the first fight.
Yeah,
because Holloway was very, like, he started out very tentative and gun shy and got clubbed a few times before he kind of let the fight come to him and figured it out and all that. And then he had a totally different approach the next time out. Both fighters learned how to fight each other from the first fight. It's just that the youth and the range that Holloway could take with him, and the toughness that he could take with him, were just things that Aldo couldn't adjust to.
Yeah.
And they aren't things that Stevens has.
Right.
Although, I mean, Stevens is definitely tough, so there's no question about that.
Yeah, he just doesn't have Holloway's game. But, you see it again. It's not just about can Stevens replicate what Holloway did. It's do people still need to replicate what Holloway did after those Holloway losses?
And we don't know.
Aldo? We don't know yet.
We don't know yet. That's really all it comes down to. If Aldo comes out and gets melted by Jeremy Stevens, then yeah, I'm going to be questioning every Jose Aldo fight, being like, well,
it would suck to see Jose Aldo in the fucking Henan Barao territory, wouldn't it?
Yeah, seeing him start taking losses to Mirsad Bektic and Alexander Volkanovski and people like that, where I'm like, I like these fighters that you're losing to, but man,
that sounds awful.
Yeah. Like watching Henan Barao take a loss to Brian Kelleher, where you could just call it from a mile out and just be like, this is going to be he's going to do well early, and then at some point he's going to get cracked because Kelleher throws hard, and after that he's just going to go away. And that was exactly what happened.
Just retire the day before this card, Jose, okay? I won't be mad. If you just retire.
All right, main event next.
Run
Eddie
your
Alvarez,
burger restaurant.
Dustin Poirier, and take it away.
All right, the most violent matchup again. Last time it was fixing to be. I guess what we should do to start our preview of this is just talk about their first fight. That's always a good idea when you're looking at a rematch. I kind of want to counter the impression that Eddie Alvarez was on the cusp of certainly winning their first fight. I think that's a mistake. It was, I want to emphasize this, all Dustin Poirier up to the point that he hurt Eddie Alvarez.
Yeah.
And it was it was especially Dustin Poirier for about 30 seconds after he first hurt Eddie. And then it suddenly became Eddie. Yeah. And there were only about, I don't know, like 45 seconds of fight, and then it was stopped because of illegal knees after Eddie came back. So I'm not confident saying, especially after seeing Poirier get into trouble against the likes of Justin Gaethje and still come back to his disciplined approach, I'm not at all confident saying that Alvarez was right on the verge of taking that fight again. The thing is like Dustin Poirier, the story of Dustin Poirier's career for the last few years, we had to move up to lightweight. Interesting new chapter, but really the story has been him trying to figure out how to be a different kind of fighter. He was a brawler early on in his career, and anytime he didn't brawl, it was kind of just because his opponent didn't want to, and if they did want to, he would brawl.
He's the aspirational picture for fighters like Nina Ansaroff and
right,
and even Ion Cutelaba at some point.
Sure, maybe not Cutelaba. I think the key difference is that Cutelaba might just be a legit brawler. Yeah, at heart. I think maybe he'll change his mind when he finally gets killed by the one perfect punch. But yeah, the thing with Poirier is, like Nina Ansaroff, I always got the impression that he brawled out of a sense of like insecurity. He brawled because he felt like he had to. He couldn't refuse that question when the opponent was like, "All right, let's start swinging now." He couldn't say no.
Yeah.
like he had something to prove, or he felt unsafe, and so he had to swing back, and like he felt like he was fighting for his life or his pride or whatever. There was something on the line that made him want to brawl, or that compelled him, even though he didn't seem to want to. And that's the thing, is I think you look at how Dustin Poirier is fighting now, and it's like, oh, this is how he should be fighting. It took a little while to get there. There were a couple of hiccups on the way, but it's like, okay, he's now like, he's learned enough of this type of fighting to be able to effectively refuse the brawl. To no longer, like, it's no longer, it's like he doesn't feel threatened by the fact that there could be a brawl. He knows that he can control it and stop it if he needs to.
Yeah.
And if he can do that, then there is so much in Dustin Poirier's game that is a nightmare for Eddie Alvarez, who is a counterpuncher, or like a reactive pot shotter at best. He is a fighter who creates brawls when opponents get over aggressive trying to fight him. And he is also, I mean, like he's crazy tough, all the physical things, blah, blah, blah. But he has some real stylistic limitations. One is against.
He's great at finding out what your limitation is within his limitations.
Sure.
Like, that's one of the biggest things that I think Eddie Alvarez doesn't get credit for. Is it's not like, oh, I'm going to add a new thing to my game, and that's what's going to blow your game apart. It's more like, oh wait, I've been doing this stuff. You know, here I am, like against Justin Gaethje. It's like, oh, I'm jumping in, we're trading hooks, you're landing leg kicks, and you're cracking me on the way in, and fuck, that hurt. But I dug in a couple body punches, and you really didn't react well to that. Body punches from here on out. Like,
he's got the truest mark of a super experienced fighter like Shogun Rua, which is that if he does something and it works, there is very little you can do to convince him to stop doing it.
Yeah.
Like, once he sees that something is effective, he's going to hit that same shot again and again and again. And he builds momentum. He builds comebacks as a result.
Yeah.
But he is often the fighter who has to be given those opportunities to land those shots. He struggles against southpaws. That's the first thing. He has a lot of his toughest fights have been against southpaws. But more notably than that, like, it's clear you watch the Rafael dos Anjos fight, and it's if a southpaw gets in his face, it's more about the type of fight than it is the stance of the opponent. And Dustin Poirier has been specifically learning a way of southpaw fighting that made Eddie Alvarez, possibly the best lightweight of all time, look like trash against Conor McGregor. Like, look like a bad fighter who just fell right into this bad style matchup. Poirier, and almost the exact same shot with which McGregor finished Alvarez, was the shot that started all the mayhem in these two's first meeting. Poirier steps back, maintains his stance, and just lets Eddie run face first into a straight left counter. So really, like, the dangerous thing about this matchup is it's really a test of how well can Dustin Poirier control his own success, is the question here. And I think he's at the point now where he can do it, where he can start to beat somebody up and not get suckered into a brawl quite as easily as he did even in their first fight. I think the Gaethje fight, like, having beat Gaethje in that kind of performance, is notable. It says that Dustin Poirier has arrived. He has figured out this new way of fighting completely enough to make it work against a guy like Eddie. The dangerous part is going to be when Poirier hurts Eddie. And once again, just like in their last fight, I see it as an absolute certainty that Poirier is going to hurt Eddie in this fight. He's a bad style matchup when he wants to be, and Eddie always gets hurt. So it's going to happen. The question is, when that happens, does Poirier go for the finish? And is that, as it so often has been, the opportunity in which Eddie Alvarez turns it into his kind of fight? But I feel confident that even if it has those moments, Poirier might get hit, might get hurt, but as long as he can survive the comeback, this is what we saw in the Gaethje fight, I think he'll get back to doing what works.
Yeah, that Gaethje fight really did give me a lot of hope for Dustin Poirier, and it's basically the reason I'm picking him here, is just to see him looking as composed as he did in that fight. Because like I say, I mean, Eddie Alvarez, it was kind of like he found the part of Gaethje's. He found the part of his game that Justin Gaethje was not ready for, and he just did that until it broke Justin Gaethje's game entirely. And even then, that was still like a back and forth war all the way through.
Yeah.
Dustin Poirier's fight with Justin Gaethje, it was much more like you just kept waiting to see if Justin Gaethje was going to get into this fight. Like,
right.
You just kind of dismantled Justin Gaethje. Every now and then Justin Gaethje would land a big shot or two, but it was very much just like, so is this the moment when Gaethje actually starts getting into this fight and stops getting just picked apart? Is this it? Is this it? And it never happened.
And I think that Gaethje is like potentially a worse style matchup for Poirier than he is for Alvarez.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, Poirier fought a really smart fight.
Yeah, he just stayed collected and stuck to his tools, stuck to a complete game that was working. And yeah, I mean, the way he was absolutely demolishing Alvarez for the better part of a round and a half, or before losing, or before getting hit by an illegal knee and getting cracked a couple times hard enough that do give me serious pause about Poirier's ability to stay safe and stay composed. But how badly he was beating Alvarez up to that point, like I can't just pick Eddie Alvarez on the he's going to be getting shit kicked and then he's going to come back.
I learned my lesson. I learned my lesson with Nunes Shevchenko.
Yeah.
Don't just assume that it's going to get worse and worse after that. When the fight ends, just as it's being turned around. And again, you have to emphasize, as in the Nunes Shevchenko fight, the word to describe Dustin Poirier's performance up to that wild portion is domination.
Oh, utterly
doing whatever he wanted to Eddie.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't really see, I know Eddie Alvarez is a guy, like I say, I think he game plans very well within his game. Yeah. He knows what you're going to do, what he can do that you are susceptible to.
But he's mostly the fighter he's always going to be.
But he's not going to come out as a whole different fighter. I mean, that was kind of the problem with the Conor McGregor fight. Whereas what was he going to do? About I'm going to be ready for the left hand, and no, I've been working on all this stuff, and I know what's coming, and I know all that, and it's but you can't add a whole new level to your game.
What was he ever going to do against that matchup?
Yeah.
Just doesn't work for him. And that's the thing is this could be that matchup.
Yeah. So I got to take Poirier here too. And it'll be a fun ass fight, but it might be a one-sided one.
Again, I think it'll be one-sided up to the point it becomes a fun-ass fight, and I'm really interested to see how Poirier turns it back into a one-sided fight, or if he can.
Yeah. Poirier opened -145, and he dropped steadily since then, down to about -160, and currently evened out at about -164. Alvarez opened at +105 and has climbed consistently since then up to about 140, currently at +137. Some late movement up and down on those lines.
I think it's perfectly fine that Poirier is a favorite.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he could be a little bigger favorite considering how well he was winning that fight, and betting on somebody to be able to turn around a really bad fight for them in a single moment.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's more like betting on Darren Elkins to get a comeback. It is a thing that Eddie Alvarez specializes in.
Yep. And
Dustin Poirier does have some chin issues. We have seen him get clipped and blown away in an instant before. So it's
absolutely.
It's still going to be a nerve-wracking, exciting, anxiety-inducing kind of fight in all the best ways.
Poirier, as a winning fighter, is not a safe, collected. This is just looks like he's not. It's not Wonder Boy out there where you're great, you're winning.
No, he's going to be looking for the kill even as he's doing the safe thing and dominating from range.
So it'll be a fun fight no matter what, and it'll be great on top of Stevens Aldo and Jedrzejczyk Torres. So.
This card is, again, bottom, little top heavy. I have no issues because the top is so good.
Yeah, if only they could make all three of those fights 5 rounds.
Yes.
Lose 3 or 4 fights off the bottom of this card, and just make those top 3 fights 5 rounds. Put Hernandez Mercier on the opening prelims. I don't give a shit. Just find more time for the really great fights.
Yeah, just only make us watch like 7 of these fights.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Would be lovely. All right. On that note, you can find me on Twitter at TheseAnytime. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush. You can find both of us over at BloodyElbow.com day in, day out, doing our writing thing. Give us a like over on YouTube, thumbs up down there, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM, all spelled out. That's where you find all the latest Bloody Elbow shows, videos, analysis, interviews, whatever that we do week in, week out. We will be back next week for UFC 227, Dillashaw versus Garbrandt 2, Johnson versus Cejudo 2. That'll be a lot of fun. Have a lot to talk about in the lead up to that. And we'll have If I Did It, Care Don't Care, Heavy Hands, all those other shows we do week in, week out. Thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you again soon.